The imaginary friend. Jacqueline, a woman from Oklahoma, says that many of her childhood memories have faded with time. But one strange memory has always stayed with her, an imaginary friend she used to talk to when she was little. Her grandparents, whom she lovingly called Granny Junie and Pa Hank, lived in a modest house with a peaceful backyard. Jacqueline remembers visiting that house often as a child. She says she has warm memories of Pa Hank, sitting beneath a tree together while he shared fascinating stories from his life. He would talk about the days of Prohibition, old adventures, and moments from a time long before she was born. According to Jacqueline, he felt incredibly real and full of personality. But there's one chilling detail. Pa Hank passed away in 1981. Jacqueline was born in 1982. At the time, she never questioned it. To her, those moments felt completely normal. She didn't think she was speaking to a ghost. She thought she was spending time with her grandfather. What makes it even stranger is that other family members were aware of unusual things in the house. Her grandmother reportedly avoided staying there on the anniversary of his death. He had died inside that very home. Jacqueline also remembers hearing him moving around at night when she stayed over. Footsteps, subtle sounds, things that never frightened her. She says it simply felt familiar. Looking back now, she realizes that her imaginary friend may not have been imaginary at all. But instead of fear, what she feels is comfort, because it never felt like a haunting. It felt like sitting under a tree, listening to her grandfather tell stories. The Ghost Kidnapper. In the late 1990s, a man named Joe relocated from California to Georgia. Not long after settling in, his brother followed and rented a large, aging house that dated back to the 1800s. From the outside, the place looked charming. Classic Southern architecture, tall windows, and a wide porch. But stepping inside was a different story. Joe says the moment he crossed the doorway, something felt deeply wrong. A cold wave of discomfort rushed over him. The air felt heavy. His instincts were screaming that this house wasn't right. While helping carry boxes into a bedroom, he suddenly froze. From above, near the ceiling, he heard what sounded like two people whispering intensely. Not soft murmurs. It felt like a heated argument happening right over his head, but there was no one there. Panicked, Joe rushed out and asked his brother if he felt it too. His brother admitted the house had a strange energy, but brushed it off, convincing himself it was just nerves. Joe wasn't convinced. He finished helping and made it clear he didn't plan on returning. And then, things escalated. Not long after moving in, Joe's brother faced something terrifying. One afternoon, his 4-year-old daughter was found walking alone along a busy road, her tiny hand raised as if someone was holding it. Police were called immediately. Everyone was confused. How had she even gotten outside? The front door was large and heavy, far too difficult for a small child to open alone. When asked what happened, the little girl calmly gave her explanation. She said she had gone for a walk with the old lady who lives here. According to her, the elderly woman opened the door for her. They even stopped to pet a dog before heading down the road. The child spoke with total sincerity, no hesitation, no imagination in her tone. She believed every word she was saying. No one could explain how she left the house. No neighbors had seen anyone matching that description. There was no elderly woman living nearby. After that incident, Joe's brother made a decision. He moved out and never stepped foot inside that house again. Stone's Public House. In the quiet town of Ashland, Massachusetts, there's a restaurant many believe is more crowded than it appears. Often described as one of the most haunted dining spots in America, Stone's Public House doesn't just have a single lingering spirit. Locals say it may have several. The historic building was originally constructed in 1832 by John Stone. Over the decades, it served many purposes, witnessing generations of visitors pass through its doors. Today, Janet Morosini, a longtime Ashland resident, works there as both bartender and manager. Long before she joined the staff, she had already heard whispers about strange occurrences inside the old inn. One of the most persistent stories involves the spirit of a young boy said to wander through the hallways. The building's history may explain why. During the devastating Spanish flu pandemic of 1918, the inn was reportedly used as a temporary quarantine location. Sick residents were isolated there when the outbreak overwhelmed the area. According to local accounts, not everyone recovered. Many believe that some of those who passed away during that time may have never truly left. But that isn't the only tragedy connected to the property. The railroad tracks that run alongside the building carry their own sorrowful tale. Years ago, a young girl was reportedly struck and killed by a passing train while playing near the tracks. One evening, a father and his young son stepped outside the restaurant to watch the trains roll by. When they returned inside, something about the boy's expression caught attention. He insisted that while they were sitting outside, a little girl had been beside them. He described her clearly, sitting quietly, crying. The father gently reassured him that no one else had been there. It was just the two of them. But the child wouldn't budge. He was certain she had been real. Stories like that are not uncommon at Stone's public house. Another presence frequently mentioned is that of John Stone himself. Though historical records suggest he did not die inside the building, many believe his spirit remains connected to the property, almost as if he still keeps watch over the place he built nearly 2 centuries ago. Janet herself has experienced moments she cannot explain. One night, while alone downstairs, she distinctly heard footsteps pacing across the second floor directly above her. The sound was deliberate, steady, as if someone were walking from room to room. She checked. No one was there. With no logical explanation and an empty building confirmed, she decided that was enough for the night and left. And yet, despite the stories and unexplained activity, Janet says she has never felt threatened. There's no overwhelming sense of danger, no oppressive fear, no feeling that something malicious lurks in the shadows. Instead, if anything, the atmosphere feels occupied, as though the past hasn't quite moved on. At Stone's public house, history isn't just remembered. Some believe it still walks the halls. The ghost passenger. In the mid-1990s, an 18-year-old girl named Julie was driving through Portland, Oregon on her way to meet friends. It was an ordinary evening until traffic suddenly slowed to a crawl. Up ahead, flashing lights painted the road in red and blue. As Julie carefully passed the scene, she saw twisted metal, emergency responders, and the unmistakable stillness that tells you someone didn't survive. The weight of it hit her instantly. Someone had just lost their life. Shaken, she kept driving. And then something impossible happened. Without warning, she sensed movement beside her. When she turned her head, a woman was sitting in the passenger seat. Julie later described the woman as wearing work clothes, ordinary, practical attire. She looked solid, real, not transparent, not shadowy, but her expression was pure panic. The stranger appeared just as confused as Julie felt. She looked around wildly, demanding to know where she was and whose car this was. It was as if she had been dropped into the seat mid-journey with no understanding of how she got there. Julie's heart pounded. Her mind searched desperately for logic. That's when she realized something chilling. The accident she had just passed, the timing, the woman's disoriented terror. It slowly dawned on her that the person who had died on the road might somehow now be sitting inches away from her. Fighting her fear, Julie tried to speak calmly. She introduced herself and told the woman she wasn't in danger. She gently suggested that there had been an accident and that something had happened. The realization seemed to wash over the passenger like a wave. The woman's panic shifted into shock. At that very moment, the highway opened into a small clearing where sunlight poured through the trees. The golden light filled the inside of the car. Julie encouraged her to look toward it. The woman turned her head toward the brightness, and in the next instant, she was gone. No sound, no fading shadow, just gone. Julie pulled over immediately, shaking, trying to convince herself it had been stress, imagination, trauma from seeing the crash. Days later, while watching the news, a report aired about a serious highway accident involving a truck driver. As the segment ended, the screen showed a photograph of the victim. Julie froze. It was the same woman who had been sitting in her passenger seat. The same face, the same clothes. The report confirmed she had died at the scene of the crash. Julie was left with a question she has never been able to answer. For those brief minutes on that highway, was she giving a ride to someone who no longer belonged to this world?
The Ghost Nanny. Kip, a man from New York State, once shared a chilling experience about a house he and his wife purchased years ago. It was an older property, the kind with history built into its walls, but at first, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Shortly after settling in, Kip's wife invited her sister to visit, along with her newborn baby. They arranged sleeping spaces so that her sister and the infant stayed in a downstairs bedroom while Kip's wife slept upstairs. The first night passed quietly, or so it seemed. Sometime in the early morning hours, Kip's wife woke up to the sound of her sister's voice drifting up from below. It sounded like she was speaking to someone. The tone wasn't frightened exactly, but it wasn't casual either. The next morning, she casually asked her sister who she had been talking to during the night. Her sister's answer changed everything. She explained that she had suddenly woken up and seen an elderly woman standing beside the crib, leaning over the baby. Startled, she instinctively told the stranger to step away from her child. There was no one else in the house. The description was clear: an elderly woman quietly watching over the infant. After that night, strange things began happening more frequently. Small objects seemed to move without explanation. Lamps would be in slightly different positions than they had been left. Subtle disturbances, easy to dismiss individually, but together, impossible to ignore. Then came the incident with the smoke alarm. One afternoon, Kip's wife was outside tending to the garden when she suddenly heard the shrill sound of an alarm coming from inside the house. She rushed indoors, following the piercing noise directly to the downstairs bedroom, the same room where her sister and baby had slept. When she opened the door, she froze. For a brief second, the entire room appeared filled with a dense white mist. Not smoke from fire, just a thick fog-like presence hanging in the air. Before she could even react, the white haze vanished. At the same time, the alarm stopped. No fire, no burning smell, no visible cause. Shaken by what had happened, Kip's wife decided to ask a nearby neighbor about the home's history. What she learned added a disturbing layer to everything they had experienced. The previous owner of the house had been a woman in her 90s. She had reportedly lived there alone for many years until she tragically died in a house fire. Suddenly, the image of an elderly woman standing protectively over a baby crib felt less random. Was it possible that the former resident hadn't truly left? Despite the unsettling events, there had never been a sense of aggression, only presence, watching, lingering. Still, the constant unease became too much. Kip says they renovated the house quickly and made the decision to move out as soon as they could. Whatever history remained inside those walls was not something they wanted to share their lives with. Some houses hold memories. Others, perhaps, hold something more. And in that old New York home, it seemed someone was still keeping watch over the nursery.
The Whaley House Hauntings. In the heart of Old Town San Diego stands a house that many believe refuses to let its past rest. The Whaley House has long carried the reputation of being America's most haunted house. Skeptics may raise an eyebrow, but staff members and visitors alike continue to report experiences they struggle to explain. Victor Santana, the operations manager of the museum, has witnessed countless guests react to something unseen. He says people frequently claim to hear unexplained sounds, detect strange scents in empty rooms, and sometimes even glimpse figures that vanish as quickly as they appear. The home itself dates back to 1856. It was built by Thomas Whaley, a former New Yorker who moved west during the California Gold Rush. What makes the property particularly eerie is the land it stands on. Before the house existed, the site reportedly held San Diego's gallows, the location where public executions were carried out. One name in particular echoes through the home's history: Yankee Jim Robinson. Robinson was executed there after being convicted of stealing a boat. Local legend suggests that Thomas Whaley himself witnessed the hanging. Whether coincidence or consequence, Whaley later wrote about unusual disturbances inside his new home. He described hearing heavy footsteps moving up and down the staircase while no one was there. At times, he claimed to hear the strained, guttural sounds of a man, noises he believed could be linked to Robinson. After Thomas Whaley died of natural causes, some believe he never truly left the property either. Visitors have reported smelling cigar smoke in rooms where smoking is strictly prohibited, a detail connected to Whaley's well-known habit. Others claim to have seen the outline of a man standing at the top of the staircase, watching silently. But the phenomena aren't limited to him. Guests sometimes notice the faint scent of lavender drifting through certain rooms. This fragrance is often attributed to Whaley's wife, who was known to favor lavender perfume. There are even reports of something brushing against visitors' legs, light, fleeting contact, as if an animal passed by. Some believe it could be the lingering presence of the Whaley family's dog. Despite overseeing operations at the museum, Santana himself says he has never directly seen a full-bodied apparition. However, he admits to experiencing moments that left him unsettled. On one occasion, he observed a doll that appeared to shift position without being touched. At other times, he has heard the faint sound of a woman crying late at night when the building was otherwise empty. Perhaps the most chilling experience occurred during a formal paranormal investigation. Investigators set up an EVP recorder, a device used to capture electronic voice phenomena, and began asking questions out loud into the quiet rooms. Simple prompts. Is anyone here with us? What is your name? At one point, someone asked, "Are you pleased that we are here tonight?" When the audio was played back later, a single word response was heard clearly on the recording: no. For believers, that was confirmation. For skeptics, it was coincidence. But for those who have walked the creaking floors of the Whaley House after dark, the atmosphere often feels heavy with history. Whether the stories are legend, imagination, or something far less explainable, one thing is certain: the Whaley House remains a place where the line between past and present feels unusually thin.